Hi friends, this is Joe, and this is episode number 189 of the Dekahedron RPG podcast. And I thought it would be neat to do a little series about how to make a sandbox campaign. And really, maybe I guess we should say how Joe makes a sandbox campaign, because the way I do it might be different from the way somebody else does it. And there's no wrong way, there's no right way. It's whatever works for you. But maybe by showing you the way I do it, it will be helpful to you if that's some information that you're looking for. In case you don't know what a sandbox is, I doubt that because you probably wouldn't be watching this video. But just in case, I'll give you a real short one-sentence definition. A sandbox campaign isn't one with a preset GM-driven plot. A sandbox campaign is one where the players are free to roam around and find their own plots, make their own goals, and try to accomplish those. In terms of computer games, think of like Minecraft, right? What's the goal of Minecraft? The goal is whatever you want it to be. That's what a sandbox campaign is. All right, good. Enough with that. So when I do a sandbox campaign, the first two things I try to come up with are a hook and an anchor is what I call them, right? A hook is that thing that just grabs the player's interest. It's that thing that makes this sandbox different from any other sandbox that they've played in. It piques their interest. It keeps them captivated. It's this new world to them to explore. That's the hook. The anchor is that place in the sandbox that they can call home. Right? It's their base. It's usually a village or a town when I make them, right? And it's that place that unless they mess things up on themselves, because again, this is a sandbox, they have that freedom. Unless they mess things up, this is where they can always go to for safety, you know, for a place to rest, to heal, to resupply. All that fun stuff. It's their home base. Of course, they're not tied to that location. If they want to move their home base to someplace else, that's up to them. If they want to go live in some other village than the starting one, or if they want to build their own tower in the woods, whatever, it's up to them. It's a sand base, right? They have that opportunity as long as they have the finances and the resources and all that fun stuff. So it's the starting point, and you flesh that out and you let them figure it out. So, what is going to be my hook and anchor for this new sandbox, right? Because instead of just telling you how I do it, I thought it would be neat to actually go through the process and make a sandbox campaign and, you know, show rather than tell. So, the hook. Longhouses. Why that? So, if you're watching on YouTube, right, this hoodie right here, this comes from Iceland, right? I just came back from Iceland a little while ago. And one of the coolest things I did while I was there is I visited this place called Eriksstaðir. This was the homestead of Eric the Red. This is where Leif Erikson was born, right? This is where Leif lived until he was like 55, somewhere around there, right? So I was walking on the ground that Leif Erikson played on as a kid. How cool is that? As an RPG gamer, can you tell me that is not the coolest thing ever? And when we look at the Nordic societies, well, a lot of people call Vikings. I'll get into that some other day. Right? Longhouses were their form of living, right? When we look at the First Nations of the North Atlantic East Coast, longhouses was how they lived. If we look at the native nations of the American Pacific Northwest, longhouses is how they lived. If we look at Northern European Frankish tribes, longhouses is how they lived. Even some islands out in Polynesia, longhouses were how they lived. Rather than every fantasy campaign, you know, every village and every fantasy campaign always looks like, you know, Dodge City from the set of Gunsmoke, or it looks like Willow Grove from the set of Little House on the Prairie. I talked all about that in my Player Unwelt show, right? It's really how far back that people can imagine daily life. But that's not how people lived during this period of time. Individual housing was too expensive and it didn't make sense. We had communal houses. So we're going to take this concept and we're going to fantasize it, right? Because we don't want to be too much of a slave to history. We don't want to make it too foreign. Again, my Player Elmsfjord show talks about that. So longhouses. So what a longhouse is, it's just like it says, it's a long house. So instead of every nuclear family having their own house, you know, mom and dad and they have 5 kids, and when the kids grow up and get old enough, they go bake their own hut or cottage or whatever. No, that's not what it is. It's a long house where entire generational family lives, like a little clan, right? Like maybe the great-grandparents and the grandparents and the parents and the kids all living under this one roof. Maybe 30 to 50 people in one long house. And just like it says, it is a long, narrow house. It's like a walkway, like this wide. You can't see how wide that is if you're just listening to the podcast. But you know, it's thinner, it's more narrow than your hallway in your house in your house, right? It's a narrow little passageway with a little fire in the middle and sleeping benches on both sides. You can call them beds if you want, but they're benches, and you don't even lay down to sleep. You sit up to sleep, and like I said, you have to fit 30 to 50 people in this one thing. Entirely different way of looking at life, but it's real. It's how it was done. So yeah, I think that's cool. And then each house is owned by, even though it's a communal living arrangement, it's owned by somebody, right? And that, historically, that's the patriarch of the house. We're not going to be as sexist. We're going to say it can be the patriarch or the matriarch. It's the elder, right? It's his house, and he is the one in charge. And historically, you lived on your long house on your property, hundreds of acres, where you would raise your crop and you would raise your sheep, and that would give you your meat and your wool and your grains that you would need to survive. But what if we make a whole village like that, right? And so instead of one long house, there's, you know, 5 to 10 long houses, each one with their own family, each one looked over by this patriarch, matriarch, this elder. We can call them a house elder, or we can call them a house carl. That's an actual historical term, but very much abusing it for this fantasy setting, but that's okay, it's fantasy, right? So each one of them has their house carl, their elder, and together they form a council of elders, and they vote on who the leader of the village will be, and he'll be the Jarl, and it's a position for life, right? And then when he passes, they all get together and vote again. Give you some nice internal politics there in the town, yet some stability. It works. And the Jarl's job, of course, is to interface with all the other Jarls of the other neighboring villages around. And and then, of course, they all report to the king. But to make it a little more interesting, let's say that this village, the one that we're working on, is between 2 kingdoms, right? It's kind of distant between both kingdoms, kind of claim dominion over the land where this village sits. Again, this is actually kind of historical. And so, of course, both kings want to tax it. But now you're going to say, hey, Joe, how can this one little village support paying taxes to 2 different kings? Well, because the taxes aren't going to be as much. Because these kings know that if a war breaks out, if they need to go to war against the other kingdom, they're going to need your troops from this village. And if you were the butthead king to this village, they're going to side with the other side, right? And so the kings actually have to kind of suck up while claiming that they have dominion. I think that's cool. That creates this inherent conflict in the world. It's an opportunity for the players to find or get into trouble, or to say, hey, let's go support this king and see how far we can rise, right? Again, the goal is up to the players. So yeah, I think that's cool. Yeah, I think all this is shaping out to be a pretty cool little setting, right? That's our nucleus for the setting. We have a village. Let's call it, I think that's an elm, So Elm Grove, no, Elm Grove is a city in Illinois. Elm Creek, not bad, maybe. Elmfield, no, that's Elmsfjord. I like that. That goes with the Viking feel to this whole thing. Elmsfjord, actually, the little S helps to carry it through. Elmsfjord, so that's the working name. So yeah, so this is where I start. I now have an anchor, I have a hook, and that's enough to get started. And in future episodes, I'll talk about the next steps. But what do you think? You like this? Is Elmsfjord's cool? Let me know, comments below, or feedback at dekahedron.com. All those methods and more are on the screen right now if you're on YouTube, or they're in the show notes if you're just listening to the podcast. But that's all I have for this time. Thanks for watching and or listening. And until next time, happy gaming, happy life. Bye. Hi friends, this is Joe, and this is episode number 189 of the Dekahedron RPG podcast. And today we are talking about, well, actually, I thought I would show you how to make a, yeah, I don't like this beginning at all.